everyone. So we are on to Unit 3, which is a short but fun and not terribly intense unit. It's one of my favorites. It is the Tech to Pop translation. So quite a few of you in your infographics mentioned how you were interested in thinking about how you kind of speak to people outside of your field. So how do you take information from within the field and communicate it to non-experts? And that's what this unit is working towards getting at in kind of a fun way. So let's talk about what it is that you'll be doing. So the premise of this is we want to imagine this scenario. Your boss wants you to draw new talent, investors, young minds, and generally engage the public with the work of your field. She's decided she wants to reach a younger audience and to communicate with those outside your field using a popular translation. So this could be a comic strip, a TED Talk, podcast, cartoon, any kind of popular translation. The goal of this project is to address a gap in general knowledge, a misconception, or some other problem your field has, and to present answers to that gap in a way that will reach and interest non-experts. So you are picking up a problem or some kind of misconception of the field that's creating problems for your field. And you're thinking about putting it into a popular translation, something like a podcast or a TED Talk, in ways that it will reach non-experts, that will resonate with them, that will help them recognize that this does indeed exist, that this is indeed a problem, that this is something that the public needs to know about and care about. Okay, so she would like you to analyze two other types of popular translations. That's key to this assignment, that you're going to analyze two types of popular translations that have tackled a similar topic to be sure the kind of translation you choose is effective. You're going to start by describing the concept you're addressing in an easy to understand way, and end by proposing some kind of popular production based on your research. Within the proposal, you will include a justification and explanation as to how and why you proposed the translation that you proposed will be effective in achieving your goal. So you basically have three parts of this. Your introduction, and then your analysis, and your proposal or conclusion. So let's talk about analyzing and choosing a popular translation, and also the two pop translations that you're going to analyze. So the popular translations you choose to analyze, so these are the two that you're going to find that already exist somewhere out there. That might be a Radiolab or a TED Talk. It could be a social media page, museum exhibits. This could be anything you find that communicates to non-experts something that's going on in your field, something related to the problem. Now, you might not find two pop translations that are going exactly for the misconception that you're zeroed in on, but I want it to be close to that. I want it to be within your field, close to the problem, as close as you can get it, and working to speak to a non-expert audience. So the two that you choose must be substantially different from one another and from the pop translation that you ultimately decide to propose. There's no reason to present your boss with two of the exact same tactics. You shouldn't bring in two comic strips to analyze, two TED Talks to analyze, a TED Talk and then a YouTube video that looks much like a TED Talk. They need to be different enough that you can look at different approaches and analyze them in different ways. So I provided here a comic strip as an example of a popular translation. This one, I believe, is taking up wind power. It's hard to see. I know that's super tiny, but I just thought it might be helpful to kind of see an example. It's not anything intense or crazy. It's just a funny little comic strip that has 6 panels that, in a funny way, approaches what wind and wind energy is that will resonate with non-experts in the field. All right, so your analysis of both translations should be specific. They should include quotes, screen captures, pictures, and you're going to include these as you're explaining the rhetorical moves of each translation. So you're going to explain the rhetorical moves that it makes to get across a specific message to a specific audience. So if I were going to do an analysis on this one, I'm going to talk about why they chose the comic strip, why they chose the language that they did, what does it say about the visuals that they chose, what about the language that's going on here, how are they communicating the issue at hand, in what ways are they using fact, and in what ways are they kind of appealing to pathos. So you're going to do a rhetorical analysis basically, and you're going to use images to do that. I need to see what you're talking about, so you're going to use images within this. All right, and then here are just the general requirements. So it needs to be 3 to 4 single-space pages, not including the images. Your introduction should both describe what you are doing and why you are doing it. So what problem are you addressing in your field? Is it a misconception? Is it a problem? Is it a gap in knowledge? You need to lay that out. You need to include your analyses of the 2 different types of popular translations you reviewed. You need to quote and provide images of those 2 sources. So I want to have direct quotes if it is, not just a visual text, and there also needs to be images. So going down to the next, you need to include 2 images formatted appropriately with labels and referenced in the body of your text. So we talked about this in the last unit, the way that we label and must refer to images. We don't just slap them into our documents and not say anything about them. And then you need to end with an explanation as to why the popular translation you propose will be effective. So you're going to compare it and contrast it to your 2 examples. And there should be an audience analysis within the explanation. So as you're mapping out why this is effective, you have got to be speaking back to why it's effective to the specific audience that you're speaking to. So to non-experts, what about it helps communicate this problem to people who don't know a lot about the field, or that may be resistant towards accepting, or don't have the kind of terminology and background information that you do to fully grasp the breadth of the problem. So this has to be in here. This specific assignment, they're all about audience analysis, but this one you're really doing it as you're kind of explaining the proposal. That's where it's really coming in. Whatever you're proposing, you should be able to articulate, analyze within your proposal how it's speaking to that audience, how it's going to get the message across. All right. So I noticed that when we did our About Me infographics to begin, I asked for you all to include a misconception in your field. What I noticed that a vast majority of you kind of discussed misconceptions about professionals in the field. Now, while that's really important and it definitely sets the tone for how the public sees the field, I want you to move away from misconceptions of people themselves and move into misconceptions about actual problems or issues that are going on in the field, or a gap in knowledge. So don't use this one to address the misconception that engineers are introverts. That's not really what we're looking for. We want to disseminate knowledge that's really important to the field and the progress that the field is making. So some examples of that, it might be a lack of women in the field of engineering, so that would be a problem in the field. A misunderstanding about the dangers of fracking, or a fear of the wrong parts of fracking. So there might be a misunderstanding about fracking in the field. That would be something to take up. There might be a lack of knowledge of what to do in a tornado. That would be a gap in knowledge in the field. There might be a lack of interest or knowledge of young people in your major, so that would be a problem. Why is that a problem? You're not drawing people into the major. That's going to set the field back, right? So you're thinking of things that are problems, setbacks, obstacles for the field. And let's move outside of just kind of the misconceptions that engineers or certain professions are introverts and think about these like big problems that are going on in the field that you can address. That's also a really helpful exercise to just think about, the way you could come into your field thinking about how to communicate these with the public. All right. So let's talk about the main components of it. So you have your introduction, and then you have your analysis, and then finally you have your proposal. So your introduction, what are you doing here? You need to explain what your problem is and to whom you are writing. So first you need to show exigence. Exigence means that you're showing that this is important, that this is something that needs to be talked about. You're kind of explaining to your reader, like there's a reason to keep reading, right? So this should introduce the purpose and objective of your report. Why are you writing? Why is it important? What's your purpose? What problem is your popular translation analysis and proposal attempting to solve? So I need to hear about the problem that you're addressing, the objective of the report. I need to hear in that the problem that you are trying to solve, right? You need to address audience within the introduction. So you need to introduce the specific audience you're attempting to create your popular translation for. Are you talking to fifth graders? Are you talking to homeowners in floodplains? Are you talking to voting Oklahomans who might affect the way the oil industry can do things? Who are you talking to specifically? What non-experts are you really targeting with this? Ideally, this audience analysis will take the form of a user persona. So remember how we did the user persona last time? Think about how you do that and work that into kind of a narrative paragraph form to where you're fleshing out who it is that we're talking to, because you have to know your audience to speak to your audience. So you need to tell me who the audience is so I can see if you're effectively speaking to them with your popular translation. And the intro should briefly introduce the sources that you've chosen. You're not going to analyze it just yet. You're just going to tell me what the popular translation is. And remember, you're going to have two of those. So you're bringing in two that you found that you're going to analyze. You will just introduce them in this section. All right, so the analysis section, this is going to be your middle section. This is going to tell us what the example is, what the examples are doing, and why is it doing it. So this is going to need to include some reasoning behind why you've chosen the two sources that you did. So why choose this example and not another? Like, what about it drew you to it? How is it helping inform how you're going to do the proposal? How is the source suitable for the audience and the problem? You're also going to describe the rhetorical moves of the source with specific examples. So what is this pop translation? What does it do? How does it do it? And why does it do it? How will it specifically serve your audience? Basically, you're going to describe what the source is designed in the way that it is. You should also include pros and cons of your source. So if you're about to propose something to your boss, you're not just going to come in and say, this thing is perfect, but I'm going to propose this other thing. You need to also comment on its faults. Like, it's doing this thing really well. The way that it's using, these really resonates with this specific audience, and it makes these decisions in this way. You're saying what it does well, and you can borrow that for your reasoning behind proposals, but you're also going to point out its weaknesses, because that's going to show that you're kind of stepping in and giving a better solution there. And then finally, your final section is your proposal. So what should we do? You're going to summarize the takeaways from your analysis section. So from your pros and cons, what have you learned to avoid? What have you learned that works well from your analysis? You're going to apply what you've learned to this to come up with a better popular translation, so to solve the problem. So you're going to generate a specific proposal for your popular translation that applies the techniques you've learned from the analysis section. So you'll use that to say, so looking at this and how it's effective and how it's not, I've decided that a comic strip is the best because of all these reasons. So you need to have reasoning, analysis, the same rhetorical moves, you're going to explain how that resonates with the audience in effective ways. And then you'll calculate the feasibility of your final proposal. So why is this the best option according to feasibility measures like time, capital, manpower, etc. So that's also important, right? You need to speak to your audience. You also need to be able to do it. You need to have the money to do it. It needs to be worth the time and money that it takes. So that will all be included in the proposal part as you go on to say, I think that this would be the best way to communicate this issue. Now, as you're doing it, it's all about rhetoric. You've heard me say this word rhetorical moves a couple times now. So you need to be consistently focusing on the rhetorical moves, both that the two popular translations that you're choosing to analyze make, and also the rhetorical moves that your proposed popular translation can make. So you need to talk about how products are designed to speak to the intended audience, need to be better designed to speak to the intended audience, and how your product will be designed to speak to the intended audience. So you probably remember this from your first year composition courses. Ethos, pathos, logos, and kairos. So you want to think about how you're going to address these. These need to come in. Ethos, what medium, or what does the medium and speaker or speaking style give the company credibility with the audience? So how does doing a comic strip specifically resonate with this certain group of people? You want to think about ethos, because ethos is all about credibility of the author, right? When you're thinking about experts in a field speaking to non-experts, especially about a problem or miscommunication in the field, you might take into account the assumptions that are carried. If you are an oil company and you are speaking to a skeptical public that thinks that fracking is absolutely disastrous in every way possible, you need to think how you can build ethos with these people that already don't trust you, and what kind of moves you can make to kind of regain that credibility with them. So you have to think about how you are going to gain credibility. So how do the other sources kind of gain credibility, either in the medium or just their style, how they address it, the language that they use. Think about pathos too, right? That's just appeal to emotions. In what ways does it speak to emotions or values? So in what ways does it speak to what's important to the audience, right? This can be to family, to health. There are lots of ways that you can kind of think about pathetic appeals and talk about pathetic appeals. So those things that appeal to the emotions of your audience, which are very important. And then there's logos, right? These are facts. This is Greek for logic. So what kind of facts speak to the audience at hand, and what kind do you need in a popular translation? Are you going to use lingo from your field in it? No, you're not, right? You're speaking to an audience that isn't steeped in your lexicon. So you need to move outside of that and think about the kind of facts that you use that speak to them, that make sense to them. This is really important to get your grade on the audience analysis part. And then finally, kairos. This is all about timing, right? It sees the moment. What's going on right now that can help you kind of use or make certain rhetorical moves or make a decision on the pop translation that's going to best resonate with the audience. So think about the timing. Nothing exists in a bubble or in a vacuum or outside of timing. So when you think about what kind of popular translation you want to propose right now, think about what's resonating with audiences, what's important to them, where are the audience that you are speaking to, where is their attention most of the time? Would it be most effective to do a social media site? Is that where they are? If they're third graders, probably not, right? If they're more in the demographic from 16 to 102, you could do social media sites. I'm obviously exaggerating with 102, but you get my point. Think about the timing and what resonates with people right now, specifically your audience. All right, so I've talked long enough for that one, and your homework is to choose your problem. So what is a miscommunication or a gap in knowledge in your field that you want to explore, and think about how you can talk to a non-expert audience to get them to understand this. If you have any questions at all, please do not hesitate to ask.